What's up, y'all? My name is Aaron Sawyer.
Matt Michaels.
This is the Refresh Cast. What are we talking about today, bro?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the law of one, basically the difference between spirituality and religion, and kind of discuss the teachings of Yeshua Hamashiach and the spiritual perspective of what he taught rather than the religious perspective it's been turned into.
Is that Hamashiach with a C-A?
Hamashiach, yeah.
Hamashiach with a T or C?
Yeah, Yeshua Hamashiach.
Hawk.
If you know.
Dude, okay, so what's the difference between European Jesus and Yeshua Hamashiach?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that Yeshua came to denounce the religious institutions of that day, to break it down. You know, they were all to the blood ritual sacrifices in order to honor God, right? They were slaughtering the lambs to forgive their sins. And they were teaching all these laws and regulations and basically putting people in bondage rather than setting them free. So his main purpose was to set people away from the religious bondage that was being done in that time. And I think that if we look at the Jewish tradition at that time, you have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. Those are the three different aspects of Judaism. And Yeshua, or the Essenes, were disgusted with the Pharisees and Sadducees because of all the blood ritual sacrifice going on. Like, they were making so much money selling animals for sacrifices. That was part of this little monopoly they had going on there.
Seems pretty full circle today, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. Like, even if you think about the story where Yeshua goes in the temple and they're all selling things within the temple, part of that was they're selling animals for the sacrifices. And that's what pissed off Yeshua so much that he's throwing over the tables and setting the animals free and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is that Yeshua was actually an Essene. And the Essenes were very much naturalists. They set themselves apart from the rest of the Jews. They chose to live out in isolation in the desert so that they were not a part of anything going on in the Jewish culture. And what they preached was getting connected to the earth, getting connected to the foods that you consume. They were not raw foodists, but they were definitely vegetarian, strong vegetarian. They did not believe in eating any animals because of the karmic debt associated with that.
Yeah, they saw what was going on. They're like, we don't want no part of that.
Yeah. So their perspective was that basically the more rules that you apply, the more disconnected from God you actually are. And that there was only one law, and that's the law of one.
Ooh, let's talk about the law of one, bro.
So the idea of the law of one is that everything is one. We're all one organism. So we talked about it before, like we are all each the individual cells or selves of God, essentially. So there's no separation, but we're in this illusion of separation. So in the Bible, the disciples ask God what the most important commandment is, or ask Yeshua. And Yeshua says, love God with all of your heart and love others as you love yourself. That's the only rule. Because that encompasses everything. Essentially, it's the golden rule. So if everything is one, and everyone is an aspect of you, then you literally need to treat them the way that you'd want to be treated because they are you. And that is the essential meaning behind the law of one.
Yeah, and I can see how that, I mean, all teachings in a way have the potential to become distorted, right? Like the teachings of Yeshua Hamashiach. Like, you know, over time, like you look at about 1099, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux ends up creating the Knights Templar and kind of pushing that. You know, he sees people living in the degrading way or whatever, and creates this movement, but then you're converting people to religion by the sword. And so I see the same thing as like it being a potential trap if not properly applied, and noting that they're not actually applying the real law of one, but they're saying, oh, love is the only law. Well, let's, you know, degrade and sodomize and turn this hell into Sodom and Gomorrah because love is the only law. I love you, you know?
Yeah,
like that's the real law of one would be like, how would, like, people love people, and the way that people move with love or their interpretation of love could be so twisted that that's not actual love.
Like
love is flipping over the tables of the Pharisees because they're hurting people.
Yeah.
And love takes many different forms. And so like I want to know what your experience with the law of one was and kind of where you first found it, how you've applied it, what you've learned about it since then.
Yeah, I've come in and out of the law of one, but recently that's what I've really been studying. And it's interesting because, I grew up Christian, then I left, and then I got back into Christianity, then I left. And now I feel like the law of one has gotten me reacclimated to the teachings of Yeshua, because I see that Yeshua really was teaching the law of one. So still really seeing the sanctity of Yeshua and his teachings and who he was, and not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Which they used to do, the Pharisees. Throwing out all the babies and the bathwater into the fire.
Yeah, so I think that one of the primary principles in the law of one is that God or the universe is law, right? So it just is that way. So you have the law of karma, you have the law of attraction, all of these laws, that essentially is God. And so God, the universe, it is always seeking balance. It's perfectly balanced. So every situation that we face in life, it's funny because we often manifest exactly what we're most afraid of, right? And it's to bring balance to that perspective, because you can't actually get rid of that fear without experiencing and walking through it. And then you're like, oh, that really wasn't shit. Or like, if your perspective is out of balance, I'll just use the situation with Callan and I. So Callan recently lost the baby, right? And so what I realized is that experience is giving me the opportunity to balance my perspective of Western medicine and with allopathic medicine in general. So not throwing out everything that they have to offer, because a lot of it is evil. It is like seeking profit off of people's illness, but they still have tools and resources that can be useful and viable for the modern day. So it just gave me the opportunity to balance that perspective, and just seeing every opportunity or every situation that you end up in is a result of the universe trying to help you find balance.
So that law of one being a karmic balance, which is like I'm so afraid of this thing. Like I'm so afraid of not having money. And then the universe is like, I'm going to hold this thing to your face until you're not afraid of it.
Yeah.
And then when you're not afraid of it, it goes away. Like your resistance is creating like the universe, like, well, obviously you need to work through this.
Exactly. And get on the other side of it. Yeah. And even the biggest fear that I had last year was this lawsuit coming to pass and me losing my money right before the baby came. And then that's exactly what I had to walk through this year. And it's just, it is building that resilience. It is balancing out my perspective. It is showing me the truth, and just always choosing to see the horrible things that happen in life as that opportunity to learn, grow, and balance your perspective.
I really want to ask about, because this, you can let Sayla grow up, Sayla grow one out. Well, these are our friends, So like the book, The Law of One, channeled by that physicist from Ra, through that physicist, I want to ask your perspective of, I want to name 3 beings, all right? You tell me how they all connect.
Okay.
Thoth, Ra, and Yeshua.
Well, they're all pretty much the same.
Like same level of consciousness, right? So they're all God-bodied out. This fucking...
Right.
Super enlightened. Okay, Sayla's out, Todd's in. You know what I'm saying?
Both of them are in.
What have I done? No, like, what is your perspective on that with the Thoth and the Ra and the Yeshua? Because, like, apparently Ra, like, that energetic body works directly with Thoth or Tahuti, as they say. So
when you're talking about like thoughts from ancient Egypt, essentially. Yeah, I mean, my perspective is that it is essentially the same consciousness coming in human form in order to help elevate the collective consciousness and spreading that. They all taught the same thing. It's pretty much all the law of one, and so that makes perfect sense to me. And then if you look at the Buddha, same exact thing. Buddha taught, it's funny because Jesus in the New Testament said, I am the way, right? And what does Buddhism teach? The way.
The way.
It's crazy.
And what does Buddhism teach? Wu way. Action without action. Yeah. No, so we talked about the law of one, the common balance. You brought up this interesting perspective of humanity moving from 3D to 4D, from the solar plexus to the heart. I want to let you expand on that for a little bit.
Yeah, so we're in this three-dimensional world, and it's associated with the sacral chakra. So in this dimension, we're facing our lower natures. So the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus, right? So it's identity, it's basic needs, it's sexuality, and mastering those. And so as we master those aspects of ourselves, then the goal is to move into the 4D, which is in the heart space, moving into a place of unconditional love. Mm-hmm. So we're moving out of just the identity of self and moving into unconditional love for all of those around us. And that is the whole point of being here in this third dimension, is to learn unconditional love, to increase to that level of consciousness. And eventually then it's about moving up into the throat chakra, which is wisdom, speaking the truth, and differentiating the difference between wisdom and just love. Right? And so it's always moving up into the next level.
I'm really excited for that, and I can feel that. Like, I think there's a lot that I have to work through with my identity, like, because we're kind of under the spells of the Pharisees. As above, so below. Life moves in cycles. We're under the spells of the Pharisees that are no different than they were back in the day. It's just the animal sacrifices look a little bit more like McDonald's.
Yeah, totally. Dude.
And the human sacrifices and everything like that. It's just like they've gotten this technological upgrade. And so within that, our perception has been distorted. You're not going into elementary school learning about the law of one. If we were, we'd probably be fucking levitating and shit, So now we got to build these metaphysics schools from the ground up, you know what I mean? But like that whole human identity, that's something that people wrestle with, not just for this lifetime, but if they don't figure it out, they'll reincarnate and continue until they learn that lesson. It's like this school of life that you just... And so I really do feel in this lifetime, because we're like young, wise, powerful, starseed type people, probably attracting the people that are listening that feel the same way. I really do feel like in this lifetime, my purpose will be to meditate to fully know God, to really experience that law of, okay, Todd, I said God, not Todd. That law of oneness. I want to feel that oneness in my soul, and I know that just given this wisdom that we have at 26 and 34 is like, I know by the time if we stay on this path, by the time we're in our 50s, 60s, 70s, it's going to be like, I just want to meditate to know God, and right now I got some podcasts. We got work to do.
Which is part of that meditation too.
Order phase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting to me because in the law of one, it basically states that you will keep coming back until you choose light or darkness. So God or the universe doesn't care which one you choose. You just have to choose one.
Right.
You have to choose light or dark, and you will keep coming back here until you choose a side, which was pretty interesting.
That's super trippy. And that's where I do think the Christian philosophy has it pretty accurate in terms of spiritual warfare. Not a lot of people are tapped into. There's levels to everything. There's levels to whatever religion you're subscribing to or belief system. It's levels in the ways that you act it out and live it, so like the Christians that I know that are super tapped in, they're all about the metaphysical, angels versus demons, light versus dark sort of perception. And so I want to know how the law of one applies in Christianity, in the Christian faith.
So that's what I think that Yeshua came to teach. So he was trying to get people to see that you're not separate from God. You are one with God. You don't need these Pharisees. You don't need these animal sacrifices. You don't need to do any of that. It's all about just directly connecting with God. And that's what he wanted us to understand. What did he teach? He just taught unconditional love for everybody around him. The only people that he demonized and put down were the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Everyone else, he lifted them up. He encouraged them. He wanted them to know that they're divine and they're connected to the divine at all times. And so I think that is the true teaching of true Christianity from Yeshua. And instead, it's been bastardized and turned into another religion. So Yeshua kept teaching that you don't need these laws. I fulfilled the law. You don't need it.
Go live it.
The more law that you have, the more separated you are. Because if you know that you are one with God, then you are going to live godly lives. And so they're like reverse engineering that, where it's like you got to try to do good things so that you can be connected to God, rather than realizing I'm connected with God, so I want to do good things.
And you can live that out, live out those teachings, and if you still feel called to celebrate with your homies on a Sunday and rejoice in a community, then, be my guest. All is welcome, right? But it's that aspect of let's typify it, let's put it in a box, let's monetize it, let's use it to control people. Like the priests are the members of the aristocracy that are, fucking all these chicks and then telling people they're bad if they get a boner, and like they're like, let's take the concubines for ourselves and then go tell the people that they're bad if they have premarital sex. And it's things like that. That's not very law of one of you. And I really do think that like we were talking about, like with the Thoth, Tahuti, Ra, that one's easy. And Yahuwah, it's like in the macro span of time, humanity has these ascended masters that come and incarnate to teach you something valuable and live it and take that sacrifice. Like these guys' lives weren't easy. Thoth was ran out of Egypt because he was a scribe and record keeper, and you're keeping the records and you're tracking down everything that's going on, and the aristocracy is like, you can get this guy the fuck up out of here. Ra, extremely powerful, light body, same thing. You got like the Anubis types that are the gods of the underworld that are like, we need to get this light the fuck up out of here, and then Yeshua Hamashiach being crucified by the empire, and that it's almost like their light is so big inside of them that they can't just fit in. They have to dissolve completely. Like their whole job is to dissolve into the divine. I think that's so dope.
Yeah, it's cool because like, what is the whole point of the light? To expose the darkness, and that darkness doesn't want to be exposed, so it's going to eliminate. And I think it's interesting thing too to like. So, have you heard of the Book of Esau?
Yeah.
Okay, so
look up in Esau.
Well, it's actually basically. The Book of Esau was transcribed by this Russian guy. He was like looking for ancient texts. He was exploring what happened to Jesus during those missing years. So he hears that there's some Tibetan scrolls at this certain monastery. So he travels there. He meets with the head monk there, and he asks for the scroll. And he's like, yeah, it's in there somewhere, but it's going to take a long time to find. Maybe we'll just have to come back in a year or two. And the guy's like, oh, okay, bummer. So he leaves. He falls off his horse and breaks his leg. So the closest place to him is the Buddhist monastery. So he actually travels back there, and the monk had compassion on him. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to find that scroll for you to make you feel better. So they find the scroll, and basically they have someone read it to him, and then he transcribes it into English. And the book is all about what Yeshua did from the age of 12 until his ministry started at age 30.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And it's really cool because it's the same stories of what you just said. Basically, he goes to all these different religious institutions. So he goes to Egypt, he goes to Tibet, and everywhere he goes, he basically calls out the religious institutions for not actually worshiping God and thinking that they're separate and building idols or worshiping nature rather than the creator. And he's just calling them out everywhere, and then they kick him out. And then he goes to the next place, he calls them all out, they kick him out. And then he makes his way back to Israel where they crucify him. And just like, what a beautiful picture of what we're all supposed to be willing to do. Just to be hated and despised for the truth, to set the people free from the religious bondage or governmental bondage or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's pretty awesome.
I'm excited to make a clip out of that because I'm going to take my time and take a whole day and use like all the photos and shit and chat GPT that, him breaking his leg on the horse. Yeah, that sounds like my next tour. No, I was thinking about calling my next tour the Hunger Games tour. Just like we go to District 1, District 2, District 3. Okay, so Essence Gospels of Peace. not really, no real smooth way to introduce that. But talk about
it. So the Essene Gospels of Peace are kind of what tie it all in for me, connecting the teachings of Yeshua with the law of one. So, like I said, the Essenes were the sect of Judaism that separated themselves from the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They didn't want anything to do with what the Jewish religion had become. And they were outside of Nazareth. It's Yeshua of Nazareth. So my thinking is that Yeshua was actually an Essene. And so that's why he had the teachings that he taught, because he was putting them down for the animal sacrifices, for the control, for the separation from God and all that. And that's what he was trying to break down. And so in the Essene Gospels of Peace, they basically talk about how to heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. And they even talk about making enema kits to clear out the colons. And
fuck yeah, dude.
It's crazy, dude.
You probably read that like, how crazy.
It's just so crazy that even back then they were doing the same things. And they talk about the importance of running water through the colon to purify the body. Talked about eating living foods, fresh fruits and vegetables. They ate eggs, and then they were into raw milk and things too. So they really believed in caring for the animals, loving them, and consuming the foods that they provide without actually killing, because of the karmic debt associated. But their whole thing was that we are all one, and so to treat everybody as that. And so overall, it's been interesting, because I think that people say this a lot, but it's different when it becomes a true revelation. So the point of everything of being here is becoming unconditional love in all things. Becoming the unconditional love in a world of polarization. Like, where can you find neutrality and love both ends of the spectrum, regardless of what your opinion on it is? And that's really just becoming a true revelation to me, rather than just words that are said. Like, so in every situation that happens, like, how can I be unconditional love? How can I be the highest version of myself? Literally, like, how would Yeshua Hamashiach handle this situation? And it's kind of this mind fuck, because part of us are like, burn down the system, fuck it all, right? But at the same time, it's like having love for the system, because it gives us contrast. It gives us lessons. Like, we can't even experience this world without the darkness. We have to have the darkness to experience the light. We have to have the light to experience the darkness. So we have to love all aspects. Or even we talk about the Bill Gates or the Carl Schwabs and all these people who just want to enslave and kill humanity, right?
Shout out.
But
one shit, bro.
But at the end of the day, we have to love them, because they're just playing their role. They chose their path, right? So they're within the regulation, and they're doing what they're here to do, and that provides us contrast to become who we want to become.
And now I just want to take this time to make my own personal clip in light of that statement. You motherfuckers don't know what you do if you burn down the system. So you better be very careful what you ask for, because you don't know how to grow your own food. You don't know how to slaughter your own animals. You don't know how to protect and provide for your community. So if you're begging for the system to be burned down, you better look at how dependent you are on it, or else you're going to die. Okay, now, back to our regular scheduled programming. I feel like hopefully this appeases some of the people that fuck with us that are Christians, right? Because, like, we really don't have any ill will towards them. It's like, I really want to bridge that gap and, like, yo, I'm not just some new age hippie. Like, there's a lot of coinciding. It sounds like you're very well studied, and that there is, like, you know, Esau and a lot of these teachings are rooted in that. The branches of that faith. Of course, it precedes that faith, because my boy Saint Bernard and Clairvaux stabbed a bunch of people and they were all Christian.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention that the Catholic Church chose what books were put in there and how they were transcribed to push a specific narrative, and they removed all these books. They gave us a different perspective of who Yeshua was, and I think that's all by design. And really, most Christians nowadays are not Christians, they're Paulians. Like,
well, because we almost had them, man. They were almost on our side, bro.
Well, but I think this is important to note on that, because, you know, the second half of the New Testament is all written by Paul. And Paul didn't actually live with Yeshua. He wasn't a true disciple.
He killed a bunch of Christians.
And he talked shit about a lot of the apostles. And he said, no, this isn't the gospel. This is the gospel. So the disciples actually taught that good works is imperative. Like in the book of James, it talks about faith without works is dead. But then Paul comes along, he's like, no. You just claim Jesus as your savior, and that's it. That's all that you have to do. It has nothing to do with what you do. And that doesn't make any sense.
And people are like, hey, didn't you kill a bunch of Christians by the sword like 5 years ago? He's like, I've changed. Like, I feel like everyone says that when they're on death row.
To me, it sounds just like controlled opposition of the Catholic, or they weren't Catholic at the time, the Roman Empire infiltrating Christianity through Paul to change the narrative, to make it about all you have to do is claim a belief in something rather than, no, you actually have to change, become something new and be born again, right? And how do you clear past karma? By doing good works. So,
I thought we were going to bridge the gap. This is going to...
We're still bridging.
I mean, because
what matters is Yeshua.
This is rooted in truth. Yes. This is rooted in truth. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Yeah. I'm gonna embody the Roman Empire and play devil's advocate here. What about, like, I think there's like different sects of Christianity, especially online.
Yeah,
like, so you got the Christ is King bros that are doing blow and messing with OnlyFans models in California. That's the sect. And then you got like the super hardcore, like fire and brimstone type of guy. I honestly like those guys better. Okay, I'm just gonna like channel them and just be like, what would they say? Something like, you're wrong, you're a new age hippie and you don't know what you're talking about because you're wrong, because Jesus Christ, his name's not Yeshua, he's not a little brown dude, all right? His name is Jesus Christ. Yes. Christ is king, bro. You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I would say that Christ is king. I totally agree with that. And what I'm saying is maybe we should actually listen to the words of Yeshua rather than the words of Paul. Like, why are we putting our faith in what Paul said about Jesus when he didn't even walk with Jesus, rather than putting our faith into what Jesus actually had to say? Because he contradicts Yeshua on the regular. The books that Paul wrote completely contradict the disciples that literally walked with Yeshua the whole time. So to me, it just makes more sense that the book that we've been given is to change the narrative, to change our perspective, so we get away from the truth within the scriptures, and instead we're focused on just the very materialistic worldview. If you believe the story, you get to go to heaven, rather than, no, you actually need to change. You're going to have to burn off your past karma by doing good works, by doing what Yeshua did, by serving others in love and humility, and that's really the point. And that puts the responsibility on you as the individual rather than on an external savior to do it all for you. And that's what our current construct does. Like, you're the victim of disease. You're the victim of sin. There's nothing that you can do about it. Someone outside of you has to save you. And what Yeshua came to teach is that it's actually fully your responsibility. No one can save you but you. You're directly connected with God. Nothing can separate that. And then you have to live it out like that if you want to live in light.
So, that was so beautifully put. It sounds like we need to delete your TikTok channel and put you in jail. No, I think that was beautiful, man. I love playing this devil's advocates. I like to beat them to the jump, you know.
I love
the response.
Yeah, I love working and talking to Christians about it, because really, like, the core foundation of what they believe is beautiful. I just feel like we get stuck up on the legalism and on belief in a story rather than living out the true message of Yeshua.
Yeah, like, you can't just sin and live a materialistic life and then say Christ is king.
Right.
That's not how we're rocking out. Right. You need to actually live it. And, you know, if Christ was king and you really wanted to apply the law of one and live that, you would leave those poor girls alone. You know?
Yeah.
You got anything else to say, bro?
No, all I want to say is, like, choose love in everything that you do. How can you be unconditional love in every situation? How can you change your perspective of everything that happens to you as being for you instead, to help you become your highest self? And ultimately, I think that's the ultimate spiritual path.
Yeah, I think that, you know, you're here to live out that path of the ultimate light and embody that. And it's okay if you get kicked out of every single place, every single city that you go to for that. You know, there's a way to apply it in a way that people will listen and integrate. So I would inspire people to do that. You can't just tell people, hey, you're wrong, and expect a constructive dialogue.
Totally.
But you also got to be willing to completely dissolve and be killed at the sword of the Roman Empire. And on that note,
refreshed, cast out.